two global giants, trillions of dollars, and a rivalry that's reshaping the world economy. The United States and China have been locked in an economic tug-of-war for over 5 years. And it's not just about tariffs and trade deficits anymore. From advanced tech to military alliances, this conflict is getting more complex by the day. So the big question is, are we heading toward another escalation in the trade war, or is a deal actually on the table? Let's break it all down. Section 1. A quick recap. How we got here. The trade war officially began in 2018, when President Donald Trump slapped tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese imports. Beijing hit back with tariffs of its own, targeting American soybeans, aircraft, and more. Trump's administration accused China of unfair trade practices, stealing intellectual property, manipulating currency, and flooding global markets with cheap goods. In return, China accused the US of trying to contain its rise as a global power. By 2020, the Phase 1 deal was signed. China promised to buy more American goods, especially agricultural products, and the US rolled back some tariffs. But the pandemic disrupted supply chains, and most of those promises weren't fully met. Now, nearly 5 years later, both countries are at a crossroads again. Section 2. Biden's approach. Same war, different tactics. President Joe Biden didn't end the trade war. Instead, he chose a more measured approach, keeping most of Trump's tariffs in place, but engaging more with allies to counter China collectively. Under Biden, tariffs remain largely unchanged. Export controls have expanded, especially around semiconductors and advanced tech. China's access to key U.S. technologies has been restricted. U.S. firms are being encouraged to de-risk supply chains. The Biden administration views the U.S.-China relationship as one of strategic competition, rather than outright confrontation. But the competition is getting more intense. Section 3. The core issues blocking a deal. So why can't the two sides just shake hands and move on? Because the disagreement goes way beyond trade. Technology. The US doesn't want China dominating fields like AI, chips, and quantum computing. Taiwan. The US supports Taiwan, which China sees as a breakaway province. That tension casts a shadow over all negotiations. Human rights. From Hong Kong to Xinjiang, U.S. criticism of China's domestic policies fuels mistrust. National security. Both nations see each other as long-term threats. Trade is now viewed through a security lens. Even if both sides wanted a deal, the political climate makes it nearly impossible. Section 4. 2024 and beyond. What Trump means for the trade war. If Donald Trump returns to the White House in 2025, expect the heat to rise. He's already floated the idea of a universal 10% tariff on all imports, even higher tariffs, 60% or more, specifically on Chinese goods, labeling China a currency manipulator again, cutting ties with Chinese tech firms like TikTok, Huawei, and others. Trump sees tariffs not just as economic tools, but as weapons of negotiation. His goal is to force companies to return to U.S. soil and end America's dependency on China. But the risks are high. If China retaliates, global supply chains could once again be disrupted, and consumers might face rising prices. Section 5. China's counter strategy. China isn't sitting back. President Xi Jinping has responded with a dual circulation policy, boosting domestic consumption while still engaging with global markets. Here's how China is preparing. Investing heavily in self-reliance, especially in chip-making and clean energy. Diversifying trade partners, with increased focus on Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa. Forming new trade blocs, like the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, which excludes the US. Beijing is also working to stabilize its economy, which has been hit by a real estate crisis and slowing exports. Still, Chinese officials have signaled they're open to cooperation if treated as equals. Section 6. Could a deal happen? Now the big question, is a deal even possible? Short term, unlikely. With the US election around the corner, neither Biden nor Trump wants to look soft on China. Long term, maybe. Both economies are deeply intertwined. China is still one of America's largest trading partners, and American firms like Apple and Tesla rely heavily on Chinese markets and factories. Any deal would likely be narrow and transactional, focused on easing specific tariffs, setting ground rules for tech, or stabilizing supply chains. But a full reset of relations? That might take a generational shift in leadership and public opinion. Section 7. Global Impact. Why the world should care. The US-China trade relationship isn't just about two countries. It affects the whole world. Global markets react sharply to tensions between the two. Developing nations are forced to pick sides or risk being caught in the middle. Supply chains become more expensive and unpredictable. If the trade war escalates, the world could face higher inflation, slower economic growth, and even fragmentation of the global economy into separate spheres of influence. Trade war or trade shift? So, is the trade war between the US and China set to continue? Or will both sides finally strike a deal? Right now, it looks more like a strategic standoff than an economic negotiation. The tensions are rooted in ideology, security, and power, not just economics. We may not see a dramatic trade deal anytime soon, but what we will see is a reshaping of global trade, alliances, and industries, whether we're ready for it or not. The next few years could define not just the future of US-China relations, but the entire global economy.